The undead were everywhere in the 1980s, but by the 90s, audiences preferred a more refined cannibal, leaving the zombie subgenre wide open for a full-blown renaissance in the 2000s. And today, we're gonna figure out who did zombies better in the new millennium, Europe or the USA. Welcome to the Cinema Cult. I'm your guide, CT, and yes, we're getting into the zombie renaissance of the 2000s with 4 films from Europe, 4 from the US, all essential watches for any zombie fan. Italy may have ruled the Euro zombie landscape in the 80s, but this renaissance brought out filmmakers from all over Europe who were fully prepared to reinvent the subgenre and make it their own. Over here in the US, the filmmakers were more interested in nostalgia, reflecting back on the fun we had with the zombies in the past. And look, if you watched my 80s zombie video, you know I totally copped out in the end when it came to picking a winner, but this time, I've got a pretty strong opinion. Don't get me wrong, all 8 of these movies are absolutely worth your time, so let's just get into it, starting with a film that in many ways redefined what a zombie could be for the new millennium, 28 Days Later. Written by Alex Garland and directed by Danny Boyle, 28 Days Later was released in 2002, and right from the opening scenes, it was clear this movie was something different. It starts with activists breaking into a medical facility, releasing a monkey test subject, and unleashing the highly contagious rage virus into the world. And 28 days later, Jim, a courier who's been in a coma since the outbreak, awakens in an empty hospital. And that's strange enough, but once he gets outside, the desolate streets of London are truly haunting. Now, the rest of this film follows Jim and his uninfected cohorts as they try to not only survive, but also find something worth living for in this new world.
Staying alive's as good as it gets.
It's almost impossible to overstate how influential 28 Days Later is. It wasn't the first movie with fast zombies, but it's absolutely the most widely known. The infected in this movie are truly horrifying. Any scratch or bite from these things, and within seconds, you too will be a victim of the rage, spitting out blood with wild eyes looking for a victim of your own. It's a movie filled with fantastic moments, from Jim's first escape out of the zombie-filled church to a terrifying flat tire in a tunnel of death. But the third act, that's where this movie really shines and shows some George Romero influence. Because, sure, these infected are a problem, but the soldiers offering refuge with a price?
I set the radio broadcasting and I promised them women.
Well, that just proves once again that humans are the real baddies. Jim manages to escape from his death march and unleashes a rage-infected zombie, along with his own bitter rage on these soldiers. And he gets downright feral attacking these guys. And the original ending of this film had Jim dying of his injuries, but I'm glad they made the change to a more positive ending, because now all these years later, we're gonna see how his story continues with The Bone Temple coming out in a couple months. Now I know 28 years later was a bit divisive, but I'm looking forward to that one. Now back in 2004, something I looked forward to was going to the mall, and that's where this next film takes us. It's Dawn of the Dead. If you thought the opening scenes of 28 Days Later were intense, this reimagining of Dawn of the Dead begins with one of the most intense opening sequences in any zombie film ever. We get thrown right into the zombie apocalypse as it kicks off alongside Anna, a nurse who wakes up to her husband getting his throat chomped on by the neighbor's kid. Within moments, he's fully zombified and coming at her full speed. Anna's escape through the neighborhood, it's absolutely harrowing. It really feels like the entire world is melting down around her. And she ends up linking up with a few other survivors, and they head to the only safe haven they can think of, the mall. And that mall setting, it's the main link between this version of Dawn of the Dead and the original. I've always found it very appropriate that these two movies basically bookend American mall culture, but this is no remake, this is a reimagining. The group of survivors here is much larger, and this movie's able to explore those dynamics a lot more, and it ends up being the level-headed former TV salesman Michael who becomes the leader of this group.
How you like following a guy that sells TVs?
But the biggest update this movie made is to the zombies. Taking a page out of the 28 Days Later playbook, these zombies are fast and vicious. You can't hope to outrun these things, and if you're not in a vehicle, you're pretty much screwed. It's part of what makes that opening sequence so exciting, and the same can be said for the escape from the mall in the final act, That also has zombies getting chainsawed to pieces and multiple massive propane explosions. And those aren't even the craziest scenes, because this one has a zombie baby birth scene, ending in a deadly shootout when one of the more level-headed survivors realizes what the hell's going on. The fans of the original Dawn of the Dead will be treated to some fun cameos here too. We've got Ken Foree as a televangelist, Scott Reininger plays a military general, and Tom Savini's here too as a sheriff. In 2004, Zack Snyder and James Gunn weren't the only ones paying homage to their favorite George Romero zombie flick, because that year saw the UK unleashing the first zombie rom-com into the world with Shaun of the Dead. Things aren't going well for Shaun. He's stuck in a dead-end job as a TV salesman, has a stepdad he doesn't get along with, a best friend holding him back, and to top it all off, he just got dumped. After a night at his favorite pub, the Winchester, with best buddy Ed, they wake up to something worse than a hangover: a zombie apocalypse in progress.
Oh, he's gone over!
So can Shaun follow in fellow TV salesman Michael's footsteps and lead his group of survivors to safety? Or will he fall short once again?
How you like following a guy that sells TVs?
Now, Shaun of the Dead is, in my opinion, one of the best executed horror comedies of all time. It's a movie that pays loving tribute to Romero's zombie trilogy with clever callbacks.
We're coming to get you, Barbara!
But this movie also never loses sight of telling its own story, and it knows how to balance the laughs with real horror and real emotional stakes. Characters you care about aren't going to make it to the end of this movie. And that actually brings me to one of my favorite scenes, when it's revealed Shaun's mother has been bitten and is turning. David, he can't stop being a dick about this whole thing, and after Shaun takes care of business with his mom, things go way too far with David. David never gets a chance to apologize though, because he gets a little too close to that window, and those zombies break through and start tearing him apart, just like the Captain Rhodes scene in Day of the Dead. It's a great tribute, and the fun moments in this movie are fantastic too. I mean, who doesn't love watching a whole gang whacking a zombie in perfect sync to a Queen song at the Winchester? Now, I was lucky enough to see this movie for free at a screening back in the day with no expectations at all, and that remains one of my most memorable theater experiences. I remember thinking the idea of a zombie rom-com sounded kind of silly, so needless to say, I was very surprised when I was treated to a movie that might just be perfect. Shaun of the Dead is more than a horror comedy. It's a love letter to an entire genre. That's a genre that a lot of people would say was kicked off by the director of my next film, because we're headed back to the US to check out Land of the Dead. 3 decades after Day of the Dead, George Romero returned to the genre he helped create with Land of the Dead. Set in a post-apocalyptic Pittsburgh, years after the initial zombie outbreak, the remaining survivors live in fortified cities controlled by a privileged few. And this one follows a group of mercenaries who venture out into the zombie wasteland in a tricked-out armored truck to scavenge supplies. This includes the basic necessities, but it also means finding luxurious goods to keep folks like Dennis Hopper's Kaufman character happy. He's the guy running things in Pittsburgh, but he doesn't realize this city is on its last days. That's because Romero continues his exploration of zombie sentience in this one, and apparently after 3 decades, these zombies have started to figure things out, especially a gas station attendant, Big Daddy. This guy seems almost like an evolution of the Bub character in Day of the Dead, and after the mercs roll through his town and shoot up his zombie buddies, Big Daddy leads a full-out zombie assault on the city, marching the undead across the river to a buffet of fresh human meat on the other side. In addition to the expected gnarly zombie kills and the direct connection to Romero's earlier films, Land of the Dead also has Asia Argento, the daughter of Italian horror legend Dario Argento, in a major supporting role. And, well, apparently George Romero liked Shaun of the Dead so much, he gave Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright cameos as chained up zombies in an early scene. Personally, I would put this movie just about up there with Romero's original trilogy. It maybe doesn't quite hit those same heights, and it's more on the nose than those films were, but it's the last really good zombie film Romero made, and it's definitely worth a watch. Unfortunately, after this one, Romero tried his hand at a found footage zombie film, Diary of the Dead, and the results were not great. Now, he should have taken some notes from Spain because in 2007, they put out one of the best found footage films of all time. It's the next movie on my list. It's called Wreck. Wreck is a tightly crafted and absolutely terrifying found footage zombie movie out of Spain, and for me personally, it's a top 3 found footage film. And like all the best of those found footage movies, the setup here is simple. We got a reporter and her cameraman shooting a local TV segment, shadowing a group of first responders out on a routine call. But when they arrive inside an apartment building, one of the officers is attacked, and it's clear there's something very wrong going on here. Not only is there chaos erupting inside these apartments, but the whole place is under military quarantine, so anyone who tries to leave will be shot. With no obvious way out, the group goes floor by floor, trying to get a handle on this situation, until they eventually get to the penthouse, aka ground zero of the zombie outbreak. And at first, it seems like this might be some sort of viral infection, but what they find in that penthouse suggests this is more than just a disease. It's a contagious, demonic possession passed on by an evil enzyme. So, just like the 1985 Italian movie Demons, what we have here are demonic zombies on the loose. Yeah, maybe that explains why I love this movie so much. And the final act in the penthouse has some of the most tension-inducing scenes of any movie on this list. It's a scene that still makes my palms sweaty when I watch it, since the danger can be anywhere here and there's no way out. And then you finally get to see the thing that's hunting them, and it takes the fear to a whole new level. It's a can't-miss film for sure. Now, while Spain was getting frightening with the found footage, over in the US, James Gunn was making his directorial debut with a tribute to the schlocky B movies of the 20th century with my next movie called Slither. Written and directed by James Gunn, Slither is what you'd get if you took Night of the Creeps, Shivers, The Thing, Society, and a whole mess of other influences from 80s horror and sci-fi and mashed them all together into a super fun, super weird alien zombie package. Now, this one kicks off in classic style with a meteorite crashing outside of a small town, unleashing an alien parasite that infects a local named Grant, turning him into a tentacled nightmare with an appetite for raw meat. On a mission to take over the world, Monster Grant uses a local woman as a living production facility for the next generation of alien slugs, and after swelling to the size of a house, she bursts, unleashing those parasites on the rest of the town, where they start turning townsfolk into acid-spitting zombies with a hive mind. Now it's up to local sheriff Bill Party to stop this invasion before it goes any further. Now, alien slugs turning their victims into zombies makes the Night of the Creeps comparison obvious, but James Gunn takes Slither to a whole other level here. Eventually, the infected townfolk seek out their master and start fusing into one gigantic creature. Now, anyone who's seen the movie Society will be reminded of the shunting scene, and this one doesn't go quite that far, but it's pretty damn close. This movie wears its influences on its sleeve proudly. The mayor is named McCready. There's a bathtub scene that mashes together Cronenberg's Shivers and A Nightmare on Elm Street to perfection. And pretty much every building in town is some sort of B-movie character reference. You can just tell James Gunn was having a great time putting this movie together.
Dude, your references are out of control. Everyone knows that.
So if you're a fan of well-crafted, nostalgic creature features, Slither deserves a place on your list. But the Americans weren't the only ones having fun with this zombie concept, and my next film out of Norway features Nazi zombies. It's called Dead Snow. Yes, you heard me correctly. Dead Snow is a 2009 Norwegian zombie horror comedy filled with Nazi zombies. And this one kicks off with a group of medical students heading to a remote cabin in the Arctic mountains for a relaxing weekend. It's a classic cabin in the woods setup when one of their friends doesn't show up and the mysterious old local drops by to lay down the lore about a battalion of Nazi soldiers who disappeared after World War II along with their stolen gold. So, of course, there just happens to be a box of stolen Nazi gold right underneath that cabin, and the undead Nazis have returned, killing anyone who wants to get in their way. I loved how Shaun of the Dead perfectly balanced the comedy and the horror, and a lot of the same can be said for Dead Snow. The early scenes in this movie are filled with funny banter and goofy character moments, but once those Nazi zombies show up, this thing gradually tilts into a pretty brutal piece of survival horror. The kills are nasty, the gore is excessive, and these Norwegians really take their frustrations out on these Nazi zombies with some inventive kills using everything at their disposal from hammers to snowmobiles. There's even a scene here where one of the students goes over a cliff and uses a zombie's intestines like a rope to stop his fall as he fights off a second Nazi zombie. It's wild stuff. Dead Snow wasn't trying to reinvent the zombie subgenre and doesn't quite hit the highs of Shaun of the Dead, but it's a super solid horror comedy that's sure to make genre fans laugh and maybe cringe a little bit along the way. We're gonna stick with the horror comedies to finish this list up, so if you like rules with your zombie apocalypse, this might be the movie for you. I'm talking about Zombieland. Directed by Ruben Fleischer and written by the duo behind the Deadpool movies, Zombieland is a stylish take on the zombie apocalypse, blending road trip comedy with buckets of gore and a whole lot of quippy dialogue. This one follows Columbus, a shy college student trying to make his way back to Ohio, when he crosses paths with Tallahassee, a gunslinging badass on a desperate quest for the world's last Twinkie. Woody Harrelson's Tallahassee character takes great joy in zombie violence, and he's a blast to watch in action throughout this one. But before their ventures can even get started, they're conned out of their weapons and their ride by a pair of wily sisters. It's not the best way to start a relationship, but these four are going to need to learn how to work together and even break some of their own rules if they're going to survive the zombie apocalypse that is Zombieland. This movie also features maybe the best cameo on this list when Bill Murray shows up. He's survived this apocalypse by disguising himself as one of the zombies so he can go outside and roam about freely. Unfortunately, the makeup effects backfire when he startles Columbus and gets a shotgun blast to the chest. Zombieland is proof that by 2009, zombies had truly hit the mainstream. So now if you got a friend who's zombie curious, this is a great movie to start them out with. They can get their toes wet without getting them completely bit off. So that wraps up my look back at 8 essential zombie movies from the 2000s I think everyone needs to see. But the real question is, who did it better? Now for me, the Europeans win this round. Now don't get me wrong, I really dug my selections from the US, but at the end of the day, most of the US films were looking backwards, remixing and referencing zombie stories from the past. On the other hand, European films were pushing things forward. 28 Days Later redefined what a zombie could be. Shaun of the Dead, it's a near perfect horror comedy. Wreck is one of the best found footage films ever in my opinion. And Dead Snow, it showed the world that Scandinavians can do zombies just as well as anyone else. But hey, that's just my opinion, and I want to hear from all of you too. You think I got this one right, or am I way off, and maybe the US deserves the victory? Let me know who your winner is, and if I didn't cover your favorite 2000s era zombie movie, well, make sure you include that as well. It was a great decade for zombie flicks, and well, these 8 are really just scratching the surface. And if you had a good time revisiting these awesome zombie movies with me, make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons to join the cult. And make sure you check out my favorite 1980s zombie flicks right here. And that's it for today. I'm CT Reese. Thanks for hanging out with me and keep watching weird movies. I know I will.